Somewhere around September 1967, a tiger named Jimmy was born, and he was the only one out of his litter of 5 to survive. I assume that he was born in captivity at the San Francisco Zoo because the zoo director of the time, Ronald Ruther, took Jimmy to his home when Jimmy was only a few days old. I couldn't find any articles about Jimmy's birth in the newspaper archives. On December 11th, 1967, Jimmy the Tiger wound up missing from the San Francisco Zoo. The Press-Tribune released an article titled, "Tiger Stolen from San Francisco Zoo," stating that authorities were more concerned about the welfare of the tiger cub than they were with the thief. The article stated that they were more afraid the missing animal would be loved to death. He had big paws that he spent most of his time stumbling over, and delighted children with his laughable growl, at the time of which he weighed about 30 pounds. Jimmy was valued at $750, which would be about $7,185 when adjusted for inflation in 2025. At the time of the article, zoo director Ronald Ruther discounted money as a motive to steal Jimmy. He's quoted as having said, "He was so lovable and so cute. I suppose someone just thought he would like to have Jimmy as his own." Jimmy had made appearances at some of the best schools and playgrounds where a keeper stood by to protect Jimmy from his fans. Jimmy had been taken from his locked cage in the Lion House. Police stated that the lock had been cleanly picked, or opened, with a key. On December 14th, 1967, the Camarillo Star posted, "Tiger cubs on way home." It stated that a Hermosa Beach pet shop owner was sending Jimmy back to the San Francisco Zoo. The shop owner, Ray Folsom, said he didn't know that he was offered a hot tiger when he purchased it from 3 hippies for $150, or the equivalent of $1,437 in 2025. Jimmy was returned by plane, and there were a few pictures taken on December 16th of that year. An article from the Sacramento Bee states that Ray Folsom, the man who bought Jimmy, immediately called the police when he heard of the missing tiger. Jimmy was flown on Flying Tiger Airlines and was coaxed down the ramp with a bottle of milk. When returned, zoo director Ronald Ruther said, "We're awfully glad to have you back." A clip from The Independent states that the hippies told Folsom they bought the tiger in Colorado. Unfortunately, though, Jimmy's life was cut incredibly short. On December 23, 1967, the Houston Post released an article titled, "San Francisco Zoo's Famous Tiger Cub Dies." It states that Jimmy choked on a piece of meat. Ronald Ruther waited to initially announce Jimmy's death until they were sure he wasn't poisoned. Apparently, night watchman Joe Calla had been making his rounds and found Jimmy lying down in his cage. He thought Jimmy looked ill and immediately summoned Ruther, who took Jimmy to the zoo hospital. Jimmy died an hour or so later. Jimmy was in perfect health until the small piece of meat caught in his windpipe. I'm unsure of what they did to Jimmy's remains, and the hippies that stole him were never caught.